What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Sports with Wes. This is actually the first post-game Texas football post-game thoughts episode that we're going to have this season. Obviously, Texas beat Rice in week number 1 of their schedule, 37-10. And so I wanted to come here and give some thoughts post-game. I did actually put my thoughts out on Twitter, X, already in a couple threads. You can follow me on Twitter at WesC512. That's at Wes, the letter C, 512. I'm going to keep calling it Twitter. I know it's X now, but it's going to be Twitter to me. So feel free to follow me, engage with me there. I'm also on Instagram at Sports with Wes. I'll probably put some key thoughts out on Instagram here in a little bit as well. Also, apologize if I sound stuffy or nasally. I did pick up a minor head cold over the weekend, and I'm working through that. But hey, that can't stop us. You know, Texas is 1-0 after this first week, and now we have Alabama coming up on the schedule as Texas looks to head to Tuscaloosa here for a big game on Saturday. So before they do, though, I wanted to give my thoughts on how Texas performed in Week 1 against Rice. And I'll probably be doing this every week just to give thoughts on how the Texas football team is doing throughout the season. Hopefully, we'll have more positives than negatives, and hopefully, it's a successful season for Texas, which includes winning a Big 12 championship, as Texas has stated, and as Coach Sarkisian has stated. That's the ultimate goal. And so expectations are high for this Texas football team. And with that, Texas has to perform if they want to meet those expectations. So I'm going to start out with the overall grade that I gave Texas football for their performance. And I've kind of gone between two different levels here. And the top level, I was thinking of like a B minus, and I'll explain why. And the bottom level, and actually the grade I'm going to go with, is a C plus. And that's for the overall team performance. That's not just necessarily for one unit. I know the defense played really, really, really well to get an A grade. I think the offense did not play as well. I think overall Texas actually, I'm going to give them a C plus, and the reason why I'm giving them that grade again goes back to the expectations. This offseason was a little different as far as expectations go. Previously, of course, Texas has been a hot topic in the offseason. Usually, it's been from more national media outlets who want to put Texas up on a screen or in an article to get clicks or to get viewers. This offseason, the expectations and the hype was actually also coming and has been coming from Texas football itself, whether it's embracing the hate, as Sarkisian will say, whether it's speaking openly about Texas wants to go win a Big 12 title before it leaves the Big 12 this season and heads into the SEC era of Texas football and Texas athletics. And then just talking about the team that Texas has in place, that Sarkisian and his staff have put in place, and what they want to accomplish. Look, they are expecting to go contend for this Big 12 conference this year, and their ultimate goal is to win the conference. So I'm asking myself after this first game, does this look like a team that is a true contender in the Big 12? And I think they showed some good things. I think the defense absolutely showed some good things. I don't think after week 1 they look like that contender, that dominant team that can go win the Big 12. Now, that's not to say that they can't grow into that. Obviously, a win against Alabama would go a long way towards that. And then now a win after that against Wyoming, who just knocked off Texas Tech in week 1, looks like a little bit more of an elevated game than we thought, or maybe in years past. So obviously, Texas could enter Big 12 play at 3-0, and the narrative shifts. Right now, Texas is 1-0. However, the game against Rice was not as dominant as we'd like to see. And I'm going to be a harsh grader on them just because of the expectations that they've set. So I'm giving them a C plus for this opening game here. Now, Texas is 1-0. That's all that matters on the record book and on the schedule. But context says that they didn't quite play as dominant of a game, beating Rice 37-10, as many would have liked, and I'm sure as if Texas would have liked. Now, I want to get into some just different points here. There is definitely some good that Texas can use to grow on and develop, and that's the ultimate goal. Even though they did not play maybe up to the standards they wanted to, or didn't execute some of the plays that they wanted to, that they grow from those and eventually start doing that. So right off the bat, we're going to start with Quinn Ewers and his performance. That is the hot topic, of course, out of this game. How did he perform? The former 5-star quarterback recruit, and now the starting quarterback for Texas, coming into year 2 as the starting quarterback for Texas. How did he perform? So I'm going to use, for a frame of reference, I'm going to use Pro Football Focus, and I'm going to use a passing chart that they have. So Pro Football Focus gives grades on an overall performance of a player, and then they also break down for quarterback. They have a passing depth grade, and there's 4 different levels to this if you haven't seen it. So the lowest level, the first level lowest, but the shortest as far as yardage goes, is behind the line of scrimmage. So that's any of those, screen passes out towards receivers, maybe even some pass dump off passes to running backs could qualify if it's behind the line of scrimmage. But Ewers was 7 for 7 in those passes, which is great from a completion percentage standpoint. Then there's the short yardage, which is 0 to 9 yard passing depth. Ewers was 6 of 9, so going almost 67% there. Pretty decent. I know one of those misses, I think, was an on-target pass to JT Sanders that hit JT Sanders right in the ear hole. Looked like somewhat of a miscommunication. Maybe Sanders was supposed to run an in or a dig. It looks like he was running an out, and Ewers had that ball ready to go and just nails him right in the side of the head. So we know that, maybe if he catches that, maybe they go 9 of 7, but instead they went, 7 of 9. Instead they went 6 of 9 in that range. And then the next range is the median, was what they call it, 10 of 19. That's going to be your intermediate passes. And really, this was the range where I was most impressed with Quinn as a passer. I thought he was really accurate and on the money with these throws. So this is the yardage between 10 and 19 yards. Ewers went 6 of 8 here. And he had the highest rating, actually, as a passer. PFF, Pro Football Focus, gave him an 82.9, so almost an 83 rating overall for these throws. Interestingly enough, the passes behind the line of scrimmage, PFF rated him a 66, and then the short was a 61.5, almost 62. So I don't know exactly knows what all goes into the ratings. I'm sure there's accuracy ratings, timing ratings, things like that. Are you placing the ball in positions where receivers can make moves and go make a play after that? So I'm sure some of that is related to those ratings overall. But for those 3, and really for actually every level here, intermediate passing was Ewers' strength of this game, going 6 of 8, rated as almost an 83 overall. And then the deep passes, which are 20 yards or more, Ewers was 0 for 6, and the team itself was 0 for 6. And then Ewers was 0 for 6. And then the passes were the rating was 37.2, so very low. So I know the deep passes are a big topic coming out of this game because it was something that was a little bit of a pain point last season. Texas wasn't able to connect on a lot of deep passes, and that's something that Sarkisian and the team have talked about this offseason. Even Ewers and Worthy have talked about it this offseason, and we know it's an aspect that Sarkisian wants to be a part of the offense, is those deep shots down the field. I think there's 3 reasons why the misses happened this game. They're not all because Ewers missed throws. He did miss some throws. The first one that comes to mind was actually the first deep shot of the game, where Ewers throws a deep right to Xavier Worthy on the sideline. It was an underthrown ball, and Worthy has to almost come back to it. Defender's in his face. He almost actually pins the ball on the defender's back, but ends up being an incompletion. There was another play where Worthy had a step on a defender on the right side again, and Worthy actually makes an acrobatic catch, and Ewers kind of dropped it over to the defender. The problem is the ball floated out of bounds, and so by the time Worthy made the catch, he was out of bounds, and so that is a miss on Ewers for throwing it out of bounds instead of in front of Worthy. Now, there were some other plays where Ewers couldn't quite step into the pass, or just didn't have the best mechanics on it. And one of the main reasons I saw for that was he was sped up in his timing due to pressure that was coming in through mainly those A and B gaps where the guards are. I think Rice was attacking the guards specifically, and that's something we'll talk about here in a minute. But you could see pressure in his face. One time was just kind of a quick release before he wanted to get rid of it. I think it was A.D. Mitchell who was going to be on the receiving end of that, and just kind of floats just kind of in the middle of the field. Really nowhere close to A.D. Mitchell. And there was another pass, I can't remember who it was, if it was A.D. Mitchell or Worthy, where Ewers sets to pass, and then all of a sudden here comes this free rusher, and he kind of makes a jump pass, and that's never a mechanic you really want to see for any sort of pass, maybe on the goal line, but certainly not for a deep pass down the field, and that was incompleted as well. And then after the game, Sarkisian, speaking to the deep ball misses, he also mentioned that receivers in some instances were not running the correct routes or not running the routes as well as they should, and that contributed to it. So really 0 for 6 was not all just on Quinn not making good throws. I think some of the offensive line protection issues played into that. There was pressure in his face and kind of sped him up in his mechanics and his timing. Maybe some routes were not being run as correctly as Sarkisian or as the play call called for. And so I think that's just a litany, a few different areas that all came together to contribute to this 0 and 6. I think there is Ewers has the arm to be a deep ball quarterback. Like, he can put the ball out there. It's going to have to, one thing he's going to have to work on is his own mechanics, his own timing with the receivers. And even if there is pressure coming to his face or coming straight at him, buying enough time, sitting in the pocket or rolling one direction to get the ball out and to extend that play best he can. Because we know that high-end quarterbacks, it's not always a clean pocket when they make a big play. I mean, sometimes there is going to be pressure, and whether that's buying an extra half second or a second or so for the receiver to break open or for you to get through your mechanics motions or whatever to get the ball out, that's a part of being quarterback. And so ideally, Texas will improve on this moving forward and be able to sprinkle in some big plays moving forward throughout the season. I do think the sentiment of how Texas performed against Rice would have been a lot higher had at least even one of those big plays connected. But when you leave a game going 0 for 6 on passes, 20 or more yards, yeah, that's not great. Obviously Alabama's looking at that like, okay, maybe we can get away with some other coverages or some other defensive formations or concepts if we feel pretty confident that Ewers may not be able to hit these deep throws. Going back a level, though, and talking about the intermediate passing, I thought that is really it was good to see Ewers at least completing those passes. And I almost wonder if Sarkisian will shift some of the play calling ratio to more intermediate passing when Texas needs chunk plays. So even if it's not a big take the top off of a defense sort of touchdown play, whether it's a first down and Texas wants to go get 15 or so yards, or maybe it's a long third down, I think there's opportunity. Ewers in this offense absolutely showed the ability to get these intermediate plays. And I think Texas has great personnel to really lean on this more so, whether it's Xavier Worthy, who can go make a play anywhere on the field, whether it's someone like JT Sanders going up and taking a linebacker into the intermediate areas of the field and making a play because, he's more athletic than a lot of the linebackers he's going to face. Whether it's Isaiah Nayor, A.D. Mitchell, Jordan Whittington. I mean, you have guys that can get downfield in that 10 or 15, almost 20-yard range and get open. And so I think that could be an area where Texas can really lean into a little bit more, even if the deep shots, the deep passes aren't always there. Now, they're not going to totally abandon throwing the deep balls. I mean, that's just ingrained in the Sarkisian's offense. But I think the ratio at which you call those and when you call those could shift a little bit as Sarkisian really gets a feel for what this offense can do, not only from a quarterback perspective, but also from a protection perspective. Sometimes certain routes need more times to develop versus others. And so it'll just be interesting to see how that plays out as well. Again, I'm going off of somewhat of a thread here I put on Twitter. Feel free to follow me at WestC512 on Twitter, now called X. And I will be posting a lot about Texas football throughout the course of the season, as I normally do. The next thing I want to talk about was the offensive line play. I thought the offensive line, especially after I rewatched it, for the most part, was solid. There's definitely areas where they struggled. I don't think they quite got the push in the running game that we were looking for. And then there were certainly times when there was more pressure on the quarterback than you'd like to see. I think specifically, the strengths of this offensive line are going to be at the tackle positions, where those are two great anchors to have in Christian Jones and Kelvin Banks. I thought Jake Majors at center was doing a good job and will be a key integral part of the success of this offensive line. I thought the guards where offensive line had its weaknesses, was where it was the most vulnerable. I do think Hayden Connor, as the season goes on, will be fine for the most part. He can kind of grow into. You're going to see him grow. I mean, he's already showing some things that he is showing the ability that he is going to grow and take step forwards. I think that other guard spot where Campbell was playing um, was the weak spot on that offensive line. And it's going to be something that I think this team's going to monitor. This is why Sarkisian has Kyle Flood. This is coaches are problem solvers, as we hear often. And so this is the first in-season problem, if you will. The challenge is someone like DJ Campbell, is he the best fit for the guard position, or is there someone else that could play that right guard position that may be a better fit? I don't know that there is. I know at one point Campbell in the second half, it looks like he got shaken up a little bit. He came out and I think it was Neto. I think Neto went in. He's number 72, and he went into a guard spot. And Neto is a redshirt freshman. Campbell is a sophomore. So I mean, they're both second year players essentially. So I don't know if there's a clear answer as to who is the better option at that guard spot. I think against Alabama, just because the lines of scrimmage are bigger for Alabama, that Campbell probably gets the nod again. He's listed at 6'3", 343 pounds, which is a pretty big player. I think if you went back and watched, if you haven't already, if you go back and watch the Texas performance, whether it was pressure coming in from Rice, they were kind of blitzing that guard spot, or whether it was some run plays. There was a couple sweeps I'm thinking of where both guards pull and they were pulling left, and Campbell couldn't quite get to his block, and it really just halted the entire run play. I think, oftentimes with an offensive line, you're as strong as your weakest link. And so I think that's going to be a position that Texas will be looking at throughout the season and just asking, can someone like DJ Campbell, can he really rise to the occasion? Can the rest of this unit help him get better, or do they need to look at someone else to get in there? But the reality is, I don't know that there's a clear answer, for someone else to be put into that place. I mean, Cole Hudson is another offensive lineman who's listed as a sophomore. We saw Neto go in, and he's a redshirt freshman. So, it's like, I don't know if there's a clear answer here for that guard position. So you might just have to look at Campbell and say, hey, man, we got to keep coaching you up. The rest of your offensive line is also going to help you. You have two great guys next to you in Jake Majors and Christian Jones. Let's see what we can do to mitigate the issues that we saw against Rice, knowing that the competition is probably going to be better than what you saw against Rice than most of the games you played this season. So it's something to watch. I thought the running game overall was pretty solid. On the note of blocking, there were a couple plays where it wasn't necessarily the offensive line that actually blew some key blocks. There was actually two instances, and I'm going to call out A.D. Mitchell on this, and I'm sure he's getting called out in film study this week. There were two run plays where A.D. Mitchell missed his block, and his defender actually, whether it was tripping, I think it was Brooks, tripping up Brooks in the backfield for a 1-yard loss, or missing a block, and I think it was Brooks again, where the play went for like maybe a yard. He had some misses on the edge. And so this whole team really needs to kind of elevate themselves as blockers collectively. Bijan Robinson and Roshan Johnson are gone. We know that. And those guys, they made a lot happen when maybe there wasn't a lot to be had initially on plays. So they were breaking tackles or juking guys out or whatever it may be. And look, Texas has capable running backs. I mean, Jonathan Brooks and Jaden Blue and CJ Baxter, I think they're going to impress probably more so than what people think. However, it needs to be a team effort this year. And so that not only goes for the offensive lineman blocking, that goes for the tight ends, that goes for the receivers. Texas is going to need a full team effort on these plays that Sarkisian wants to run. It's going to take everyone who is called on the block to block well for these plays to really work. So that was just a little nugget that I saw was not only were there some missed blocks by offensive linemen, There were a couple key blocks by some receivers, specifically the ones that stick out to me were A.D. Mitchell. And so just something to watch moving forward as this Texas offense continues to figure out what it does well and what it can lean on. Because that's the goal. Figure out what you can do well, what can you lean on, what can you call in these either short yardage situations or these third and long situations, these money downs, when you're behind, when you're leading, what can you call that can advance the ball when you need to advance the ball downfield. So that's just something to look at. So overall, Ewers had some good moments. Obviously, the deep ball was a miss. Offensive line had some good moments. There's some key positions or key players to kind of monitor moving forward. I thought the running backs actually did pretty well. None of the running backs got over 100 yards on the day, but collectively the run game did get over 100 yards on the day. And I think Texas does have three solid options at running back between Jonathan Brooks, C.J. Baxter, and Jaden Blue. I think those guys are good enough. All of them are good enough to earn carries every game. And that's really not out of, I know there's a lot of talk about Sarkisian always having 1,000-yard rusher in his offenses. And I don't know that we will have that this season or not. I'm sure that he would love to have that. But I think regardless of that narrative, there are capable running backs. There's three of them at this running back position. I think that's a great thing for Texas. Injuries happen at this position. It's always great when you can put in fresh legs at this position. And so I think Blue, Baxter, and Brooks are three guys that are going to be very capable for Texas. We already did see an injury bug pop up with Baxter, who on a great little run where he kicked it out left and scooted upfield. It looked initially like he landed on his shoulder. Texas is saying it's a rib injury. We'll see what sort of playing time he gets against Alabama if he plays at all. Certainly hope he does. But I thought overall the running backs were solid, and I think they're that whole position group. Again, it's not Bijan Robinson, it's not Roschon Johnson, but it's not like that whole position group is just falling off this season. I think all three of those guys are very capable, and the position itself is very capable as well, especially when it gets good blocking. I think for the offense, and maybe there was a reason why, of course, there's probably things that Sarkisian wants to hide before we get into Alabama. I think one of the keys on the offense is going to be JT Sanders. There is a plethora of playmakers across this offense. We know Xavier Worthy is awesome. We know Jordan Whittington can be great. Texas has added A.D. Mitchell, who had a nice touchdown that looked very similar to a touchdown he had in the orange and white game. He had a touchdown against Rice. We're finally getting to see Isaiah Nayor. There's a lot of excitement for the young Jonte Cook. So there is a plethora of guys on the outside that can make plays. I just listed three running backs who I think are very solid. Even someone like Keelan Robinson or Savion Red may have some opportunities to do things. But I think JT Sanders is going to be a really big key for this offense this season. And that might sound obvious, but I say that to say, I see Ewers kind of struggling with the deep ball. We see him doing pretty well with intermediate passes. I think Sanders can be a great intermediate passing target and be a mismatch that Sarkisian can lean on and move around the formation. And we'll probably see that against Alabama and certainly in Big 12 play when Texas really starts leaning on their best players to go make plays. I know Sanders did have that seam route that he caught for, I guess it was initially 8 or 10 yards where he caught the ball and he just took it all the way down the field. That's a great play. Moving forward, of course, a team like Alabama is probably going to have a safety that can make a better play on it than that poor Rice safety that tried to make a play and just couldn't make anything happen. And there's going to be better safeties and defenses in conference play as well. But I think Sanders is someone to watch moving forward. Is how does Sarkisian use him and really leverage him and get the most out of him in this offense? And how can you use him not only to make big plays, but to help Quinn Ewers out and just identify what Ewers can do well moving forward, especially in conference play. So overall, I think the offense had Texas completed one of those deep passes. Like I said, I think you're probably feeling better about the offense than you did. The fact that Ewers was 0 for 6 and Texas was 0 for 6 on these deep throws, that just doesn't leave a good taste in anyone's mouth. And that Sarkisian wants that to be a part of this offense. And really the reality is it needs to be a part of this offense if Texas wants to really contend and compete for the Big 12. because there's going to be moments where Texas needs to go get that big play. They have an opportunity to go up, or they're behind, or whatever it is. You got to get that big play and that big touchdown quick. You're going to need that to really be what Sarkisian and Texas want to be towards being a Big 12 title contender. So we'll see how that all develops. Overall, defensively, Texas played a really, really good game. The defense definitely gets an A grade. The defensive line was dominant, and they really just got better as the game went on. They were really very consistent. Devontae Sweat obviously was a guy that was plugging holes and making noise in the middle of that defense. You saw the depth and the rotation across that line. That was you had these guys rotating in, and the defense didn't really see a drop off. I do think that there's fair questions to ask about the edge pressure that defensive line can bring. There's certainly guys there that have flash talent or flash potential to be impact players on the edge. I think the question comes in is, do you have anyone that can be a consistent threat every week to be that someone that a defense is almost like scheming against or like making note of, that can go attack the quarterback, go pressure the quarterback, be disruptive in the backfield? I don't know that Texas quite has that yet. Maybe someone will emerge. That's kind of been one of my off-season questions is who does Texas have on the edge that can really rush the passer at a consistent rate? So we'll see if that comes to fruition. Maybe that is Ethan Burke. Maybe that's Barron Sorrell. Maybe that's someone else. But we'll see how that goes. The entire defense itself had great depth. The defensive backs showed a lot of depth as well. They were rotating guys in at different positions in the defensive backfield. The defense, the defensive back, the secondaries, sorry, the defensive backs, the secondary didn't really get tested deep by Rice. And, part of that is just the defensive line was applying a ton of pressure that Rice never could really get those passes off. And maybe Rice just doesn't have that capability against someone like Texas or in general. I do think Alabama is going to test the Texas secondary and test those safeties deep. And then certainly Big 12 teams will, depending on the opponent. So I don't know that we really got to see how well the safeties and the coverage held up on the back end. So that's something else to watch. However, from a depth standpoint, I think there's a ton of depth in the secondary, and even some young guys like Malik Muhammad comes to mind as someone who was playing well and making plays. Michael Taft is another one. Of course, Austin Jordan got an interception on a really good, somewhat of a gift from JT Daniels, but hey, he was in position to make that play. So we'll give Jordan that credit. And then you think about the linebacking crew. That's probably the position that has the least amount of depth, but there still is depth there, right? There still is rotation players there. Obviously, Anthony Hill is a big part of that. But Jalen Ford, made an athletic play. He's one of the heartbeats of this Texas defense. One of the leaders there. He made his big acrobatic interception and turnover already. David Binda had his moments. He also did have a little lapse in coverage there. He might be a guy that could get picked on a little bit by opposing offenses, so something to watch. But then, you had Anthony Hill, even Jet Bush came in and gave Texas some snaps and some minutes. So I think overall, of course, coming out of this game, the defense is like the strength. And one of my other questions before this season, it was around Pete Kwiatkowski and what sort of product was he going to put on the field entering year 3 now that he has his guys, his scheme is installed, he's gotten recruits, he's gotten transfer portal guys. There's some carryover guys that are certainly doing well in their positions from the previous staff. So I think overall this is a big season for PK. Can you get this defense off the field when they need to get off the field? Can you stop opposing offenses on these conversion downs, on these money downs? Can you go make those big impactful plays and really be a segment of the team that Texas can lean on when they really need to? And so I think there's certainly players to make that happen. It'll be on him to make it all come together. But so far, so good. The Texas defense looked pretty stout against Rice. Now, granted, that is Rice. And we'll see how they do against Alabama moving forward. Tough test because we know Jalen Milroe, very mobile, capable quarterback. And we know that Alabama will always have some playmakers on the outside. And, of course, that big offensive line as well that they are notoriously touting in Tuscaloosa. And then special teams wise, a few things that stuck out to me. It was great to see Bert Auburn hit a 49-yard field goal before the end of the first half with 1 second left to go. And then I saw Xavier Worthy was in a punt returner, and I think that is it's always interesting when one of your best players or even your best playmaker and skill position player is a returner, because you never want to see them get hurt in those situations where maybe someone else can be returning punts or kicks. However, some of the most impactful moments of Texas football in the past 10, 15, 20 years have come in special teams and return games. And sometimes it's been defensive backs that have been those players to make the plays as a returner. We, of course, know that Jordan Shipley had his moments as a returner and was obviously a prominent wide receiver. I kind of think that putting Xavier Worthy at punt returner is going to actually pay dividends. Like, I know there's a risk again with injury. I think that is going to pay dividends. He is just such an electric player, especially if it's tough to make big plays happen with him on offense. It just gives him another chance to get the ball in his hands and go make a big play. And I think that'll pay dividends overall. So just something to watch there. Again, those are the moments that can really swing a game and can help a team get a good overall win, especially on the road, whether it's a big field goal or a big special teams play. There's something to watch there. So overall, I know this may be a little harsher than some other people or what they're saying. I'm giving this performance a C plus. Part of that is, I think, just the expectations that have been set by this team, not just national media or local media. This team is saying they want to be a real contender for the Big 12. So one of my questions was, coming out of that game, did Texas look like a legit contender for the Big 12? I don't think that they did, and I also think that they, obviously there's a road to where they can absolutely become that, and that starts with beating Alabama and then following up with a win against Wyoming. If Texas is 3-0 heading into Big 12 play, this is a whole different narrative, right? But this is just week one, and Texas did do some good things. The defense did some great things, and there's some key things to look at, especially on offense and execution on that side of the ball, that I think plays into my overall C plus rating for Texas. And look, sometimes it's also as simple as, like, on third down, Texas was 6 of 15. That's not a great percentage. They were 1 of 3 on fourth down. Texas is going to have to find those plays and be able to execute in those moments to extend drives when they need to. This was against Rice. You can't just go 1 of 3 on fourth down against Rice or 6 of 15 on third down against Rice. I mean, you want to be over 50% at or over 50% for both of those metrics. And so those are just some of the things, along with the context of how the team played, how they blocked, how the passing game, how did the passing game look? How do they look in the running game? Those are some of the things that I came into play when I was thinking about what grade I want to give them, in addition to the expectation that Texas has, knowing that this is year 3 in Sarkisian and his staff's systems. You have older or experienced players all across this roster. It's time for Texas to elevate its game and to show that it actually can go compete in this Big 12 conference in the last year of this conference before it goes into the SEC. So, look, on the schedule and in the record book, Texas is 1-0. That's the most important thing here. We can't also discredit, though, or just ignore context. And I think that's where my C plus comes in. I, of course, want Texas to get better. There's certain building blocks they can use to get better. There's even a roadmap to go beat this Alabama team. I did watch the first half of that Alabama game, and Alabama looked good. And I think there's different ways Texas can go into Tuscaloosa and beat that team. They're just going to need to be playing better than they did against Rice. And so, definitely things to work on. If you like this content, feel free to like and subscribe. This is Sports with Wes. I am Wes Crochet, the host. Just a reminder, this channel is not just Texas football focused. It'll certainly be football focused for most of the fall. It is a channel for me to talk about different teams and leagues and sports that I find interesting. So this will be very focused on football, fantasy football, the Longhorns, NFL this fall. And then I also do follow the NBA at a decent rate. I'm a Houston sports guy, so I follow Rockets and Astros as well. But that is, oh, sorry, I'm playing this ad. I'm just playing an ad. But yeah, feel free to like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at Sports with Wes, or follow me on Twitter at WesC512. Happy to engage with you there. And I'm going to keep doing this weekly. Give post game thoughts. I might do some pregame thoughts moving forward. I do have some thoughts on Alabama after watching the first half of that game. I expect Jalen Milroe to be the quarterback that Texas will have to defend against, and we'll see how Texas does come this weekend. So, if you watched this far, thank you for watching with me. Apologize again on the stuffiness, the nasaliness of my voice today. I'm overcoming a little minor head cold, but I know, hey, this can't let us stop talking about Texas football. Texas is 1-0 after week 1, and not every Big 12 team can say that. That's definitely for sure. But thank you all again. Like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you all later.